Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. An international conference on the reconstruction of Ukraine was held in Berlin at the invitation of the German presidency G7 and the European Commission, with the participation of the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and Chancellor Olaf Scholz, among others. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, gave a virtual speech. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki also took part in the conference. Participants unanimously stressed that the entire Western world should be involved in rebuilding Ukraine. I think now is the time to decide on the creation of a financial Ramstein on the model of this defense Ramstein. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki noted the need for Russia to finance the reconstruction of Ukraine and reminded the audience that all too often in history there have been situations where states have avoided responsibility for causing war.
I'm going to emphasize that there is a huge pot of gold to be taken and dedicated for Ukraine's reconstruction, which is Russian assets of Russia Federation and Russian oligarchs. They are frozen in Switzerland and in many other countries all over Europe and the globe. But freezing means really not too much. Frozen assets can increase in value in several years or in 2 years' time. They have to be confiscated. And the money should be dedicated for reconstruction of Ukraine.
More than 40% of Ukrainian citizens have had to leave their homes. That's almost 18 million people.
Ukraine needs fast rehabilitation right now as we speak, especially as Russia is deliberately leading targeted attacks on civilian infrastructure.
This conference is about developing the structures and the mechanisms that will help to facilitate and finance what John Maynard Keynes in 1944 called permanent reconstruction.
U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price conveyed that Russia's use of a dirty bomb or nuclear weapon would carry severe consequences. These are weapons that are capable of contaminating a large area of land with radiation.
We are concerned that this false allegation could be used as a pretext for further Russian escalation, and we've made that concern very clear. At this time, though, we haven't seen any. Not seen any reason to adjust our own nuclear posture, nor do we have indications that Russia is preparing to use nuclear weapons. But we've heard these very concerning statements, and we wanted to send a very clear signal.
Meanwhile, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier made his first visit to Ukraine since the war broke out. The highlight of his stay in Kiev is a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky. Russia has been waging a brutal war against Ukraine for the past 8 months, in violation of international law. I was anxious to send a sign of solidarity to Ukrainians, especially now in the face of attacks involving drones. Fighting is taking place mainly on the eastern and southern fronts. Yesterday, the Russians shelled the Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions. 7 civilians were killed in Bakhmut. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine relayed that since the beginning of the conflict, Russia is said to have lost more than 68,000 troops, 2,600 tanks, 5,300 armored vehicles, and nearly 250 helicopters. Russian potential is wasting away as a result of this madness, a war against our country and the entire free world. Russia could exert influence with gas. Now it can't. It had significant military potential. It will soon evaporate. 131 bodies have been exhumed so far in the Donetsk region territory, liberated by Ukraine. They are both civilians and soldiers. Ukrainian investigators are conducting an examination of the Russian catacombs. In turn, local media reported that Iranian Shahed drones were launched by the Russians from Belarusian territory. Ukraine's energy infrastructure has become the target of Russian attacks over the past few weeks. In October, it was the target of 51 attacks. By comparison, 83 have been carried out since the start of the war. This is a policy of exterminating Ukrainians by creating conditions that make life impossible. As winter approaches, the Russian government is deliberately depriving people of basic things: water, electricity, heat. Just as in the past, they condemned Ukrainians to starvation during the Great Famine of 1932-1933. This is terrorism and a war crime. Rocket fire is being replaced by an attack using Iranian kamikaze drones. These drones are also being delivered in batches, and these resources will soon run out of capacity. In turn, the World Bank has indicated it will provide an additional $500 million to Kyiv. Poland may have to build a barrier on its border with the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad to stop a wave of illegal migrants who could start trying to cross in the coming weeks, a top Polish official said earlier today. Krzysztof Sobolewski, General Secretary of the ruling Law and Justice Party, told public broadcaster Polskie Radio 1 that Poland was considering building a barrier similar to the one it has constructed on the Belarus border on the frontier with Russia's Kaliningrad. Poland has built a 5.5-meter or 18 feet tall steel barrier equipped with motion sensors and cameras stretching for about 187 kilometers or 116 miles on the Belarus border. Poland had previously said that the border guard had received funds to build an electronic barrier of sensors and cameras on the Kaliningrad border. We will have to strengthen our forces on this section of the border and probably consider maybe prolonging. I mean, you cannot prolong it, but build similar border fortifications to those we now have on the Polish-Belarusian section of the border and do everything so that this hybrid war is not successful, because it is the element of a hybrid war using illegal refugees, illegal migrants, because they are not refugees. Russian media has reported that Kaliningrad has opened its skies to flights from the Middle East and Asia in a bid to attract more airlines and tourists. With Russia and its ally Belarus using migrants as part of a hybrid warfare campaign to destabilize Europe, and with tension running high due to the war in Ukraine, Poland fears a repeat of a crisis that saw thousands of illegal migrants trying to cross the Belarus border in 2021. Sobolewski said there were signs of larger groups of migrants appearing at the Belarus border. It is Putin and Lukashenko checking our defense capabilities, and so far these checks were negative for them and positive for us, and we will do everything we can to keep it that way. But we are also expecting that it will not be quiet on the Belarusian part of the border, because we have signs that bigger groups of migrants start appearing there. The hybrid war on the border still lasts, and we need to be aware of that, because it is a side effect of Russian aggression in Ukraine, and anyone who is familiar with the Russian doctrine knows that Ukraine is only in the intermediate stage. Today, the new British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said that he was elected to rectify the mistakes that have been made recently, but warned that it will involve making difficult decisions.
I've just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name. It is only right to explain why I'm standing here as your new Prime Minister. Right now, our country is facing a profound economic crisis. The aftermath of COVID still lingers. Putin's war in Ukraine has destabilized energy markets and supply chains the world over. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Liz Truss. She was not wrong to want to improve growth in this country. It is a noble aim. And I admired her that represents the very best traditions of my party. Together, we can achieve incredible things. We will create a future worthy of the sacrifices so many have made, and fill tomorrow.
No, because being somebody who's non-white myself, I would have wanted somebody with a few more, a few more scruples probably, being a bit more left-leaning maybe, especially coming from, a minority and having suffered certain things, you would want somebody to understand that.
So many Asians living here, and I am living here in this country about 42 years, since 42 years, So it is a long time. So anything can happen, when you are living in a multicultural society,
Until the end, so because you're Asian guy, help out everyone actually, help out everyone. Color doesn't matter, we're all humans. Color doesn't matter, we're all humans. And yeah, hopefully he does his best.
Too much attention to the ethnicity or faith of the Prime Minister because we want everyone to have a fair chance. The fact that this is possible now in 2022 is a new thing in British politics that wouldn't have been the case even 10 years ago, and certainly not 20 years ago. So I think that is a change in our public life, a change in our politics, and probably does reflect broader changes in professional life in Britain. He's had opportunities and advantages in life that most people don't have. And the change in British politics really is that it's more open across ethnic and faith grounds and gender grounds.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful evening.